We are live, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you back to Torah Studies. This is our weekly look at the Torah portion. Torah portion this week, we have a double. Torah portion this week is Acharei-Kedoshim, and there are a lot of mitzvot contained in the double portion. Today we're going to talk about what does it mean to really help someone, and how to know when you're helping them or when you're helping yourself. That's going to be the theme of today's class, which is a very important conversation. Hey, good evening, welcome. All right, so before we get to the actual class materials, which we will definitely get to soon, I do want to first do some readings from the Chumash. I have a Chumash open in front of me. This is the Stone Edition, and I feel like a magician. See, it's a regular deck of cards. Stone Edition Chumash, and I want to read some of the highlights of the second of the two portions, which is Kedoshim. David, our birthday boy, did you do the first or the second?
I did the second.
Oh, okay, so this is yours. Okay, so Kedoshim. So I'm just going to read a few selected highlights because this Torah portion has a lot of mitzvot. You know, as the beginning of the Torah has a lot of narrative. There's a lot of narrative. Stories and creation and drama and sibling rivalry and whatever. And then you get to the building of the Mishkan and you have a lot of details. And now I feel like there's some narrative, but there's a lot of loss. So Kedoshim opens up, that's the second of the two. Kedoshim opens up with God's word saying, "You shall be holy, for I am holy," God says, which is a radical take. Kedoshim tiyu, you shall be holy. Y'all, well, if we were in the South, y'all, or all y'all shall be holy, right? Why? Ki kadosh ani. God says, because I am holy. Now, you might think, well, of course you're holy. You are God. Like, what do you want from us? No, you should be holy because I am holy. And then the Torah describes what that means to be holy. It means to revere your mother and father. It means to observe Shabbat. It means don't worship idols. I'm just going to fast forward through some of this stuff. It means when you reap the harvest of your field, you shall not complete your reaping to the corner. You shall leave the corner for the poor. It means that you shouldn't steal. You shouldn't deny falsely. You shouldn't lie to someone. You should not swear falsely by God's name. You should not cheat your fellow. You shall not rob. Rob is different than steal. One is,
What's the difference?
One is, in Jewish law, one means if you break in when the person's not around.
Okay.
The other one is kind of like an armed robbery, like it's a stick up.
Okay.
No one says stick up anymore. Was it the 50s? They break out my fedora. Sorry. Did we lose my camera? We did.
Yeah,
All right.
You're
All right.
okay now.
We're back. Yeah, I'm having issues with this setup. Okay, then we have some interesting. It's amazing. All of these, and every like half a sentence is another mitzvah. A worker's wage shall not remain with you overnight until morning, meaning you got to pay your workers on time. And then it says you shall not curse the deaf and not place a stumbling block before the blind. You shall not commit a perversion of justice. Shall not favor the poor. You shall not honor the great. Meaning you might have, in the justice system, you might have compassion on the downtrodden and lean justice toward them. That's not kosher. You can have compassion, but justice is just. Nor should you go the other way and lean it in favor of the one who is powerful and mighty. That's also not okay. You gotta follow the law and then figure out from there. You shall not be a gossip monger. We talked about that a lot. Also, we talked about that with others, to others, about others. I'm kidding. Don't be a gossip monger. Don't hate your brother in your heart. You should reprove your fellow and do not bear a sin. No taking revenge, nor bearing a grudge against the members of your people. You shall love your fellow as yourself. I love how that's like the mitzvah of all mitzvot. Love your fellow as yourself is like a half a sentence amidst this list. It's crazy. It's wild. Observe my decrees. You shall not mate your animal into another species. So no crossbreeding of animals. Not plant your field with mixed seed. A garment that is a mixture of combined fibers, and that means specifically wool and linen, shall not come upon you. And so It just keeps on going. I mean, there's like dozens of, maybe not dozens, I don't know what the count is. There's a lot of mitzvot in this week's Torah portion. We're going to focus on one of those lines that we read, which is the one about not placing a stumbling block in front of the blind. And tonight, our objective is to figure out what exactly does that mean? Because there are many different ways to read that, and as we'll see, that is going to be important. It's going to be important to understand how we understand that mitzvah. Okay, so let's begin with text number 1. I know I kind of read it inside the Chumash, but let's officially, formally kick off the class with the text of our booklet, with text number 1. Give me a quick moment. Let me pull this up on my screen, and we will take it away. Okay, David, please read text number 1.
You shall not curse a deaf person. You shall not place a stumbling block before a blind person, and you shall fear your God. I am God.
Thank you. Now, most of the time, let's break down this text. So, number 1, the Torah says, "Do not curse a deaf person." Now, let me just ask the following question. It may seem obvious to you, but let's just discuss it. Why is there a prohibition against cursing a deaf person? Let me just play devil's advocate for a moment. Pardon the expression. If the deaf person can't hear you, then what is the problem in cursing them? What do you think?
They can't defend themselves either.
They can't defend themselves? Good, right? Because they don't know.
They're being disparaged in front of others.
And they would never know about it. Good. What else? What's another reason?
It's still you being mean.
It's still right. It's still you being mean, and you're not supposed to be mean. Right. Good. What else?
Other people in the community hear it.
Other people hear
Yeah,
it. Good.
it's the fact that you said it, period. It's the
Right.
fact that you were being mean, period.
Right. Good. I'll add one more point that Kabbalah emphasizes, and that is, and it's something that we've spoken about in classes in this topic, and that is whenever something is uttered, whether positive or negative, it creates an energy, and that energy has an impact. And so even if the person can't hear it, it affects them in a potentially negative way, and therefore, okay. So in addition to the harm that it does to oneself, that now you're the person who takes advantage of the person that can't hear, like what does that say? What does that say about you? So in addition to that, there's also the concept, there's also the notion of the impact that it has on the other. Okay, so that's that. Now what about the second half of the verse? Let's jump back into the second half of that pasuk, the second of the verse that says, "You shall not place a stumbling block before a blind person." Can someone give me an example of what that means, to place a stumbling block before a blind person? On a very literal sense, what does that mean?
To literally put something in front of someone who's blind when they're walking and trip them.
Right. Okay, so straight up, somebody can't see, and you put a stumbling block, something that they're going to, stumble because of, and you put that in their way. That is not kosher. That's a literal stumbling block before a blind person. The question is, if you read it literally, like we just did, then the question becomes, why is it necessary to have this prohibition? Because it seems like the prohibition has already been stated in Torah one book ago in the book of Exodus. Let's read Exodus 21. This is the battle of the bar mitzvah portions, because this was mine. Text 2 was mishpat. my bar mitzvah Torah portion, I didn't even realize that till now, is text number 2. Ramon, please read text 2. Verses 33 and 34, please.
And if a person opens a pit, or a person digs a pit and does not cover it, and a bull or a donkey falls into it, the owner of the pit shall pay. He shall return money to his owner, and the dead body shall be his.
Okay, so let's break this down. Again, the first step is to understand what it's actually saying. So the Torah tells us about our responsibility toward, about our responsibility toward each other in the sense of liability and damages and tort and whatnot. So it says like this: if a person opens a pit, and when it says opens a pit, it means if you either dig a hole, in the ground, or if there was, let's say, a hole that was dug but was covered, and now you take off the cover. I mean, that's. I feel like that's fairly prevalent, right? They put a plank of something, wood or metal, right over it, and now you're the one who opens it up, and then someone, God forbid, Well, actually, it says, and a bull or donkey falls into it. So then, if God forbid the animal dies, then you're liable for the death of the animal, and you got to pay for the full reimbursement or the full value of the animal. You can keep the dead body of the animal, because if you paid for the animal, then whatever. The exact details of liability aside, the point is that you're liable for this hole, whether you dug it or whether you opened it, and we call that in the Talmudic tractate of Bava Kama. It talks about the Arba Avos Nizikin, the 4 major types of damages, tort and damages, and one of them is called bar, pit. And so we already have learned in Torah that if you create a dangerous space, and what is the difference, frankly, between opening a pit or creating, meaning whether you're creating a hollow in the ground or whether you're putting something above ground, either way, if you're causing someone else to fall and get injured, the Torah has already told us that you're liable for it. So if this is the case, if the Torah has already told us about liability all the way back in Exodus, why does it need to seemingly repeat this in Leviticus and say, oh, by the way, do not place a stumbling block before a blind person? Now, I know what you're thinking. It's not exactly the same. In Exodus, it wasn't talking about a blind person. It was talking about anybody. But what's the difference? I mean, if for anybody it's dangerous and you're liable, then certainly for someone who can't see and defend themselves and protect themselves, it should be a problem. And you might further say, though, that, well, it doesn't say in Exodus that you're not allowed to do it. It just says that if you do it, you're liable for the damages. But, I mean, there's a lot of inferences in Torah. And the rabbis were very good at inferring things. And one of the things that we can infer is that if you are liable for a certain action, it probably means you should not have done that in the first place. So if you already told me that there's liability for digging a hole in the ground or basically creating a dangerous space for people to walk, if you've already told me that there's liability for that, well then, do you really need to tell me a whole book later, don't place a stumbling block in front of the blind? I feel like I already know that. So that's our opening question tonight. I'll ask a few more questions. Second question that I'll ask. So again, question number 1, it seems to be repetitive from another law that we know earlier in Torah. Second question is, look how text 1 ends. It says, you shall fear your God, I am God. What does that mean, you shall fear your God, I am God? I mean, I know what that means, but why is it in this context? Don't place a stumbling block before the blind, you shall fear your God. So again, what's the juxtaposition? And I'll ask one more question, a third question. What's the connection between these laws and Kedoshim, the Torah portion that talks about being holy? We could ask that on any of the mitzvot that are mentioned in this week's Torah portion, but I'll ask it about this one. What is holy about not placing a stumbling block before a blind person? To further enhance the question, I want to also cite another mitzvah that we find in the book of Deuteronomy. Now, we have not yet, in the cycle of Torah readings, we're not up to Deuteronomy yet. I mean, we were like a few months ago, but we're not up to it now this year yet. But in Deuteronomy, the Torah tells us the specific laws regarding building a new house. So this is, I guess we would call this new construction laws or even old construction, but regarding the obligation of a homeowner to protect the innocent who might hurt themselves on your property. Text number 3. Dasi, please read text number 3.
When you build a new house, you shall make a guardrail for your roof, so that you shall not cause blood to be spilled in your house, but the one who falls should fall from it, the roof.
Okay, so here we have a pretty straightforward law. The Torah says, if you're building a house, you have to make sure to put a guardrail around the roof, because somebody's going to go up, and they might get a little too close to the edge, and God forbid, they might fall off. And that's not going to be cool. And the blood will be spilled in your house, meaning it's going to be your fault. So to avoid that, the Torah says, you put up a fence around your roof. What does that sound like? What is the Torah again telling us? To be careful, to not create a situation of danger for someone else. It sounds kind of like, don't open up a pit. And it also sounds like our Torah portion of not placing a stumbling block before the blind, meaning don't create a precarious situation that somebody might get hurt. So whether it's a wall, a guardrail around your roof, or whether it's not placing a stumbling block in front of the blind, which is even more egregious. The point is that we should not set someone up for danger. Text 4a, Rambam Maimonides, explains how what we just read in text 3 is both a positive commandment to place a guardrail, as well as a negative commandment not to not have the guardrail. Okay, so let's read text 4a. Meira, please read text 4a.
The positive mitzvah to build a guardrail on the roof of a house. This commandment instructs us to remove hazards and dangers from all our dwellings. That is why we must build a protective wall around the roof, around pits, ditches, and anything similar, so that no one in danger might fall from them or into them.
Okay, so there we have it. Oh, sorry, continue.
Likewise, any unsafe or unstable places must be repaired or constructed in a way that eliminates the risk and removes the danger.
Okay, so Rambam says we have a positive mitzvah. So just to explain what that is, a positive mitzvah means that there's an action-based mitzvah. The Torah says, do this. Negative mitzvah would be, don't do that. So what is the mitzvah about the guardrail? It's number one, a positive mitzvah, which means do build a guardrail on the roof of the house. And that would not only be limited to the roof of a house. It could be around pits, around ditches, or anything similar so that no one falls into danger. And likewise, says Maimonides, and I know you just read this, but just repeating it, safe or unstable place. It's not only about something that needs a wall or a guardrail. It has to be repaired in a way that mitigates the danger. I think we could probably reasonably extend this to the idea of shoveling your... I know it's Atlanta. And I know what you're thinking. Shoveling, right? Who's shoveling? But there are people that shovel in the winter. I mean, it's legit. My camera keeps going out, but here we are. So, look, I would say keeping your property clear of danger would be akin to putting up the guardrail around the roof. It's the same concept, so that no one should fall or hurt themselves on your property. Okay. Torah has these laws. Okay, let's continue though, because this is where it gets interesting as a negative commandment, as Maimonides will articulate. If you don't mind me, please read text 4b as well.
The Torah warns against leaving traps or obstacles in our land or our homes, so that people should not die because of them. As it says, you shall not cause blood to be spilled in your house. In the words of the Sebrei, you shall make a guardrail is a positive commandment, while do not cause blood is a prohibition. There you go. It's a double whammy. Sometimes in Torah you have a mitzvah that's only positive or only negative, and sometimes the way the Torah phrases it, you get a positive and a negative. You get a double whammy mitzvah, 2 for the price of 1. By the way, for those keeping count, there are 613 total mitzvot, of which 248 are positive, 365 are negative. Pretty easy to remember the negative, 1 for each day of the year. I'm kidding, right? So, or not kidding, but yeah, 365 negative, 248 positive, and this one about the roof, the guardrail, around the roof, is both a positive and a negative. And just to see it in the original text, in text 3, it says, you shall make a guardrail. That's the positive mitzvah. And then you shall not cause blood to be spilled. Well, that's the negative mitzvah. So there's a positive mitzvah, do put a guardrail. Negative mitzvah is do not allow your property to be dangerous so as to cause harm, damage, death, etc.
Is that really 2 mitzvahs, a positive and a negative, or is it causation?
Excellent.
Sort of like you need to shoo the bird away,
so that you don't take the egg with the mother still being. Excellent question.
Yeah. So
excellent question.
Is it really not just a causation?
Excellent. So here's how it works. One could argue that every mitzvah would have a side and a flip side. Potentially. I don't know, I can't think of every mitzvah, but but there are. But it doesn't exist with every mitzvah.
Keep Shabbos. Don't break Shabbos.
Don't not keep Shabbos, right? So is every positive and negative also? The short answer is no. The longer answer is that those that counted the mitzvot, meaning there were a few great rabbis around the Middle Ages who went and said, okay, here's the list. So they all created they had their own internal rules, which they wrote up about, like how they classify a positive, a negative, a positive and a negative. When do we count the flip side, or when is it just merely like the causation? Like if you don't do this, then that's going to happen, but that still seems or when you count the split off as 2. And so, again, without knowing the particulars of this one, Rambam writes, Maimonides writes up his rules, and I guess per those, he felt that he deemed it worthy enough to write 2. There are others. I'm not saying that there are others that disagree with this, but there are other lists with slight variations. This might be one of them, might not be one of them. But I understand your question. But there was a formula for figuring this out. Which one is just part of the one, or enough of its own to be separate? The point, the overarching point, the larger point is that it seems like once again in Deuteronomy we have this prohibition against creating a scenario of danger for someone who's walking around, so that they might fall and hurt themselves, and that's prohibited. Once again, it calls our verse into question. Do you really need a separate mitzvah to tell me do not place a stumbling block before the blind, when it already seems to be covered in the pit mitzvah in Exodus and in the roof mitzvah in Deuteronomy?
But doesn't the pit mitzvah apply to property and the other applies to person? Because it's talking about animals, and animals are property.
Good. So you could say,
not people.
Yeah, you could say that the direct
So
messaging of Exodus was about the
damaging
animal.
someone's property as opposed to putting
The person in danger. Okay, good.
And
That's-
also, not putting up mashur. That's not just physical. That could apply emotionally, psychologically, everything else.
Now you're
too.
touching on where we're going in this class. Excellent. Toba just said something that the kids today would say is fire. I think that's what they would say. And that is that it's not just necessarily a physical michshal, physical stumbling block, but it could also be an emotional, a psychological, maybe even a spiritual stumbling block. So we're going to get, that's the angle that we're going to take in today's class. We're going to elevate it from the other examples that we gave that are very much cut and dry about not opening up a pit literally, or making sure there are guardrails around your roof literally, to other forms of stumbling blocks that are not quite so literal. So to do this, we're going to jump into our next text. Okay, so let me pull this up so that I can read it. We did 4a and 4b. So now we are up to text 5. Okay, so here we go. So text 5 is from the notes to Sefer HaMitzvot of Rabbi Saadia Gaon. Rabbi Saadia Gaon he was in the Gaonic period, hence his appellation Gaon, his description term Gaon. That's about 1,000 years ago. And then there was a commentary on his Sefer HaMitzvot and his list of the mitzvot of the 613 by a more modern rabbi from the early 1900s, Rabbi Yerucham Fischel Perla. So he explains the following, text number 5. Merle, please read if you don't mind.
What emerges is this: when it comes to creating a physical hazard with one's own hands, there is a distinct prohibition derived from the verse, "You shall not cause blood to be spilled in your house."
And that's just to pause for a moment, that's the Deuteronomy verse, and that's about people. So we have the physical harm to people already in Deuteronomy. That's already covered. Continue, please.
The prohibition of "you shall not place a stumbling block before a blind person," however, was applied by the sages to a different kind of stumbling block, not a physical danger, but misleading someone with harmful advice that leads to sin. For example, if the question arises about whether a certain woman is permitted to a kohen and you falsely answer yes, you cause him to marry her when in fact she is forbidden. Another example is giving advice that causes financial loss, or handing a cup of wine to a Nazir, or a limb from a living animal to a non-Jew. This is an entirely different matter, and therefore requires its own separate warning.
Thank you for reading that. Let's break this down. Very, very powerful idea. So in the opening paragraph, as I mentioned as you were reading it, he makes a very simple point. Physically causing damage to another person's body or life by creating a hazard, that's prohibited in Deuteronomy with the rule regarding putting a guardrail around the roof and not allowing it to be without the guardrail. That's already been stated. What is our mitzvah? Meaning in this week's Torah portion, all the way back in text 1, when it says, you shall not place a stumbling block before a blind person, that means giving someone bad advice. What kind of bad advice are we talking about here? He says halachic, bad Jewish legal advice. So for example, when it comes to marriage, saying, yeah, that's not a problem. If it is a problem, then that's a problem. You shouldn't do that. Or he uses the example of giving advice that causes, not even a ritual law, advice that causes financial loss. That's a problem, right? Don't be giving someone bad financial advice, because that is placing a stumbling block before the blind. Or handing a cup of wine to a nazir. Nazir is somebody who took a vow that they wouldn't drink wine. And you're like, l'chaim, don't place a stumbling block before the blind. Don't do that. Or giving a limb from a living animal to a non-Jew. That's one of the 7 laws for all humankind, is not to eat, the prohibition against cruelty to animals, which includes eating a limb from a living animal. And that's, again, setting someone up for stumbling, and that is not okay. So these are, whether it's a mitzvah or whether it's financial, monetary, the bottom line is we are not allowed to set someone up for harm and for danger, whether it's physical danger that's already covered elsewhere regarding the fence around the roof, or whether it's financial danger or spiritual danger. We ought not set someone up for failure. What I want to do is go much deeper. That's also, so this was all kind of, I'm not going to say basic, but this is all classic. What I want to introduce right now is really the main idea, the main, I would say chiddush, the main novelty of tonight's class. And this is based on an insight from the Lubavitcher Rabbi, where he takes us further based on a Rashi and really deepens our understanding of just how subtle this prohibition against the stumbling block before the blind really is. And to understand that, we're going to keep on going into our next text. So let's read now text number 7. Text number 6. Text number 6. This is going to be Rashi on our opening verse about not placing the stumbling block before the blind. Tova, please read.
You shall not place a stumbling block before a blind person. Before a person who is blind regarding a matter, you shall not give advice that is unsuitable for them. For instance, do not say to someone, sell your field and buy a donkey with the proceeds, while in truth you plan to cheat them, since you yourself will take it from them.
Okay, so Rashi says here, so how does Rashi define this prohibition about a stumbling block before a blind person? So he says, before a person who is blind regarding a matter, okay, you shall not give advice that is unsuitable for them. I know I'm literally repeating what you just read, but I'm just trying to break this down a little slow. So, and he gives an example. Don't say to someone, sell your field and buy a donkey when you plan to take it from them. What do you plan to take? The field. The field. So what's happening here? What advice are you giving? You're telling someone, so imagine someone comes to you and says, hey, I'm thinking about selling my field. And you're like, oh my gosh, that's such a great idea. You should totally sell your field and buy a donkey. So why is that problematic?
What does he need a donkey for if he doesn't have a field?
What does he need a donkey for, right? That's a simple way of understanding. Like, what do you need a donkey for? Like, you're trading. It reminds me of when I was a kid. I used to collect baseball cards. As kids do. I had a Mark McGwire rookie card. And I traded it. I still remember this kid's name. I traded it for like 30 random cards. And I kicked myself. When Mark McGwire broke the home run record, I kicked myself. And then when he got busted for steroids, I'm like, well, that's fine. No, not that it's fine that he took steroids, but it's like, what do you say in Yiddish? Nicht gefährlich? Like, not so bad. I'm sure the card is not worth anything anyway. I think we're good. True story.
The question is, did you get anything good in the random cards?
I don't know. I feel like my best card, even to this day, which I'm not sure exactly where it is, it's somewhere, is a Jerry Rice rookie card. But I'm sure it's not in decent condition, because who was like preserving it back then? It was like cards. Back to the story. So person has the field, and you're giving them advice, sell the field, get a donkey. It's great. Donkeys are the next best thing. When you're planning on gaining the field. So what's the issue? Let's break down the issue. Here's how the Rebbe understands it. The issue is not that fields are better than donkeys, necessarily. Now, it could be, but it doesn't, maybe it's not necessarily about, maybe it's a small field.
What's he to do with the donkey and the field?
Well, no, I mean, but hold on 1 second. Let's say.
He's going to go into the moving business.
That's it. I was going to give an example. Excellent, David. Right. Let's say you're getting into the donkey,
Donkey's Hall thing.
the donkey hull business, or maybe you need a inspiration for your new game called Donkey Kong. Wasn't there a thing called Donkey Kong? Did I make that up? I don't think I did. Okay.
Pin the tail of the donkey.
Yeah. Pin the tail on the donkey. There's so many applications that you can't have with a field. I've never heard of pin the tail on the field. It's just not a thing. So let's argue for a moment, because it's feasible, that the donkey for the field, you didn't lose any money. Let's say maybe it wasn't a great field. Maybe it was like lousy. Maybe it didn't produce anything. A bunch of weeds. And this donkey is a great donkey. The best donkey there is in all the land. And maybe it's a talking donkey. Shrek. Right? Maybe it's like an amazing donkey. And the cool thing is that you now have a donkey. So maybe it's not terrible advice. What makes it prohibited? What makes it prohibited?
Conflict of interest.
The Rebbe says exactly that subtly here what's happening is the person that's giving the advice, even if it's, you have to listen to the subtlety, even if it's beneficial to the person that's getting the advice. Maybe it's a good deal. It's a good donkey for a bad field. But if you're the one giving the advice, and in your mind you plan on saying, and I even have a buyer for your field, I'll buy it from you, that invalidates your ability to give advice. Why? Because you are, what did you say? Conflict of interest. Do you know, okay, so I actually planned on calling someone today to get the terminology, but I didn't. So I just didn't get around to it. But I'm sure in investing, there's a thing where if you're a financial advisor, right, and you're advising someone of what to, where to invest, but you're making more money off of one product versus another, are you allowed to advise that, or you have to disclose it? How does it work?
Insider trading?
No, not necessarily insider trading, but it's like there might be a conflict of interest there, right? Correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, you probably have to disclose, like, FYI, I get more, this because of that. The point is, if you don't disclose it and you're giving advice, how do you know that you're really giving advice that's in their best interest as opposed to giving advice that's in your best interest? Who's going to be the judge on that? You? You can't be the judge on that because you are, as they say in Hebrew, in the halachic terminology, you are nogea b'davar. You are,
Personal interest.
Yeah, you have personal interest. Yeah, you have a bias in the matter. So you can't be, you're not impartial anymore. Okay, let's read this inside. Beautiful. And just so you know, we're going to expand this concept from giving advice about fields and donkeys to giving advice about any sort of thing, life advice, spiritual advice. We have to be careful. This is going to be the takeaway. We have to be careful when mentoring, when guiding, when advising to make sure that it's completely in their best interest and not any trace of our own self-interest, in which case we're invalidated from helping them because we're not even helping them, we're helping ourselves.
What if it's a case of their best interest is truly also your best interest? Like if we're talking about a financial advisor and they have just a flat fee of 3%, and then whatever makes your client the most money is also what makes the advisor the most money because they get the 3%.
Yeah, I don't think that would necessarily be the same level of interest. It would be more like, you ever walk into a store and you find that I'm trying to think of an example. They're pushing, I feel like this happens all the time, but I can't think of any examples. They're pushing one product over the other, and then you're in the back of your mind, it's are you making more money off that one than the other one? You know what I'm talking about? Why are you pushing that one? You're buying an air conditioner. It's oh, go for this one. It's why? Is it really better for me or is it better for you? And to be on the other side, on the receiving end of that, it's a little bit, so it's possible you might not be aware of it, in which case it's even worse. But when you do become slightly aware of it, then it becomes very disorienting. Then you're not like, then you don't even know, like, is it good advice? Or like another example, imagine if you found out, I'm using a little bit of maybe it's a dated example, I don't know if it is or not, I haven't read it in a while. Consumer Reports still exists? Yeah? Okay, so imagine they come up with their list of best whatevers, best toaster ovens, boom. And you're in the market for a toaster oven and you're reading it, but what if you found out, and I know they don't take any advertising, what if you found out that, well, maybe they did take advertising and maybe they were getting paid a little bit more from one company than the other to kind of, bump it up a little bit. It's like the joke about the judge who walks into court on a Monday morning and says, look, over the weekend, the plaintiff attorney slipped me $10,000 on the side. Over the weekend, the defendant attorney slipped me $15,000 on the side. Folks, we have to have an impartial case. Defendant, I'm going to give you back $5,000 so we can have an impartial case, right? So that's right. We got to make things even. The thing is, if you have, or like anytime there's a ranking, I am notorious. My wife is like, just take out the word best. I'm notorious for Googling things with the word best. Like best this, best this. She's like, why write best? Just write, whatever. But like best. And then you get a list. And you don't know what that list is from. Not Consumer Reports, just any random online list. Who's ranking it? Who's placing it number one? Is it because it's really the best? Or because, and that's one of the frustrating things about
promotional consideration.
Exactly. Advertise, sponsored ads at the top of the list. That's one of the things that's frustrating about using the internet in 2026 is that it's kind of hard to tell like what's actually happening and what's real. And then you go to Reddit and like, who knows if that's even, like, I don't know if the bots are running that too. Like, who knows anymore what's real and what's not and what's actual advice and what is self-interest. And so that is the way
I certainly get your point, but I do not understand the English in the last part of this.
Where it says cheat?
While in truth you plan to cheat them, since you yourself will take it from them. You plan to cheat them, and you yourself will take what from them? The
field. So, and the cheat is not really cheap because you're actually going to buy it.
You're buying
but
it.
But Rashi,
taking advantage of.
That's what it is. The way the Rebbe, so that's, I agree. It should not have been translated like that because it makes it sound less subtle than it is. The way the Rebbe reads the Rashi, because in the Hebrew it doesn't actually say cheat in the traditional way. It's a different form of the word. What it means is that you're going to take advantage of the situation. You find out, oh, someone's looking to sell their field. I'm definitely going to convince. I need a field. I'm definitely going to convince them that selling is a great opportunity now. Oh, it's a great time to sell and get a donkey because meanwhile you want a field. So now you're the last person to be advising in this situation because you actually want something out of it.
No, or you might lowball on a price.
You might lowball, but even if not, the very concept means that they're not getting. I agree with you. The language could have been better. Let's read text number 7, and this is how the Rebbe begins to develop his understanding of the Rashi and of the prohibition. With the addition of the closing phrase, you plan to cheat them since you yourself will take it from them, Rashi emphasizes that the problem is not simply causing the blind person to exchange a field for a donkey, since that in itself does not necessarily result in loss. And again, that even highlights the problem with the translation of cheat, but nonetheless, right, it may not necessarily result in a loss. It could, but it might not. What's the problem? Text 8. We're going to do a bunch of texts in a row. Text 8, Rashi, in a different part, a few chapters later, says the following. The Torah is warning against offering advice to someone that is unsound for them, but according to the mode of life or benefit of the advisor. And that's a problem. Meaning, is it good for you or good for them? If you're offering them advice, it's got to be good for them. Text 9. The Rebbe completes his interpretation, and all of this should be what I shared outside and just kind of emphasizing it and bring it home. This is brought out in the example cited above. Do not say to someone, sell your field and buy a donkey and then cheat them, since you yourself will take it from them. It may very well be that the one receiving advice will not suffer any actual loss at all, meaning they'll get a fair price for the field and they'll get a good donkey. But still, since the advice is unsuitable for them, not truly needed for their situation, the Torah forbids it. For when giving advice to another person, and here's the moral, one must think only of that person's circumstances and determine what is genuinely appropriate for them, and not exploit the situation for one's own profit and then cheat them, since you yourself will take it from them. Now, one might argue, if the person who is blind regarding this matter loses nothing at all, then what's the let's pause for a moment. Why are they blind regarding this matter? Not that they're getting taken advantage of in the financial sense. They're blind to the fact that you have an interest, that you're not advising them solely for their interest. You're presenting yourself like I'm helping you out, but really you're helping yourself out. That's where they're blind. They're blind to your intention. Okay, so one might argue, if the person who's blind regarding this matter loses nothing at all, at the end of the day they're getting the value, the value of the field, then what's the problem if the advisor benefits? This is exactly what Rashi addresses when he explains, you shall not place a stumbling block before a blind person. Before a person who is blind regarding a matter, you shall not give advice that is unsuitable for them. Here, stumbling block includes even a case where the blind person has not suffered any actual financial loss, but the stumbling block lies solely in the nature of the advice itself, advice that is unsuitable or maybe not specifically directed for them. The one who is blind regarding the matter believes the advisor is offering them advice that is in their best interest, while in reality the advisor is cheating them, since they themselves will take it from them, deceiving them and giving advice that is really only in line with the advisor's own benefit. I will say this on a more even subtle level, and this is where things can get a little bit tricky. Sometimes if you're the one giving advice, it's really hard to check in with yourself to make sure that you only have the other's best interest in mind, and you don't have any trace of self-interest. Do you know what Torah would, or Rashi, the Rabbi would probably advise you in a case where you're not sure if your own interest is going to somehow, change things around? You know what you should probably do? Not give them the advice. Tell them, I don't know that I'm qualified to give advice, because I'll be honest with you. I would love that field. Imagine if someone says to you, I'm thinking about selling my house. What do you think? You think it's a good idea? You think it's a good idea to sell my house, or it's not a good idea? And meanwhile, you would love to buy that house. And you tell them, it's a great idea to sell the house. That's not going to be a kosher way to do this. Yeah.
What if you're upfront about your conflict of interest so they're not blind?
Right. I would say that probably would not fall under the prohibition here. I think my screen went blank. I apologize if that's the case. I'm having a glitch on my end. I believe it's a very good question. If you disclose and you say, look, I'll be honest here. I have a vested interest in this. I would love to buy. I think that this is in your best interest also. But I will tell you, do not rely on my advice, because I really would love that field if you're selling it. But I do think there's an opportunity. But don't take my word for it. I don't think that that's a prohibition. I think that happens in life, meaning that's something that happens where people say, this is my interest, this is your interest, do you want to make a deal or not? I think that's okay. The problem is the deception. The problem is the blindness. That's really the problem. The problem is where the other person doesn't realize that you have an interest in it, and then meanwhile you've kind of manipulated the situation. Dr. Maxey, jump in.
Thank you. So my question is along that same line. So basically, let's say I really like your house. And then one day you come and you say, hey, Joy, what do you think? I'm thinking about selling my house. What do you think? So I could say, hey, Rabbi, I got to tell you, I really like your house. So I'm not the person to ask advice on whether or not you should sell it. But here's 3 real estate people that I know that are really qualified to answer your question. And then if you put it on the market, please let me know. Or before you put it on the market, would you please contact me and let me know? Would that be okay and not?
Yeah.
100%. And that's exactly the spirit of what the Torah is telling us. It's not saying you're never allowed to be interested in someone else's house and buy it, or even ask them, or even knock on the door and say, hey, if you ever consider it, that's kosher. The issue is the stumbling block in front of the blind. That's the issue. The issue is, and see, that's very different than the physical issue of, creating a roof without a guardrail, where it's very dry. This is a little bit more. I asked the second question I asked earlier, if you recall, was, why does it say, and you shall fear God? The Yeresim Elokecha, and you shall fear your God. Why does it say that? Why does it add that? And I think we now have the answer. The reason why it says that is, as Rashi points out also in a different Rashi, as Rashi points out, a person might say, oh, I didn't have any interest. When I advised them, it was totally for the right motives. I didn't have any ulterior motives. I wasn't thinking about buying it then. Now I decided to buy. Listen, Hakmanish cup. Like, don't lie to me. You know what I mean? Like, first of all, who are you lying to? You're lying to yourself. Great. One of the what? There's no great kunst. There's no accomplishment to lie to yourself. That's number one. Number two, which is probably even more important, is the idea that you're lying before God. And God certainly knows our intention, and certainly knows if we had the intention initially to kind of try to get something from someone that wasn't necessarily in the best interest. And so, again, the point over here is that you're not necessarily offering a bad deal, but or advising something that's bad for them, but it's good for you, and you didn't disclose it. That already makes it not kosher, and that's a much more subtle prohibition in this context. Make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay, we're going to jump into a few more points. I'm still having technical issues. My camera is having some problems, so I apologize for that. But I'm hoping my voice comes through. So you guys can see me though, right? It's not like my face went blank. That would be weird if that happened. I don't even know what that would mean. But let's do a little bit more. Let's do a little bit more inside, because we have a few more texts that are really, really beautiful. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at text number 10. The Rebbe says that this is true when you're trying to help someone spiritually. Make sure that it's about them and not about yourself. Now, this is a message for everybody. It's also a message to Chabadniks. If you're going out on the street and asking someone, hey, would you like to put on tefillin? Would you like some Shabbos candles to light? If it's Friday, to light, before sunset. All of that is great, but make sure that you really care about them, and it's not because you want to say that you got another person to wrap tefillin. It's about. Don't make this about you. It should never be about you. If you're helping someone, it's got to be about them. And so here, look at this, because you could argue, like, who cares? You're helping someone do a mitzvah. Who cares if you're like also keeping score and taking selfies and posting it and whatever it is? Maybe that's also okay. Make sure that it's not about that, even if you do it. Text number 10. I'll read this as well. A quote from the Rebbe. This provides us with a remarkable lesson about the extent to which a Jew is obligated to invest him or herself in the well-being of another Jew. It is not enough that your actions happen to bring someone else benefit. What also matters is your approach, your intention, and your purpose. When you do a favor for another, you must be completely free of self-interest, thinking only of the other person's situation. Only then will your kindness be pure, untainted by hidden motives or personal gain. And before we wrap up, I do want to do a few more very interesting texts. Some of you may know this. I'll ask it as a question to get started. The question is, have you ever seen those big RVs in the downtowns of a city? You know what I'm talking about with the Chabad?
Mitzvah tanks.
I was going to ask, what are they called? Mitzvah tanks. In Atlanta, you don't really have, that's not so prevalent. But in Manhattan,
we see the Chabad rural sprinter van down here periodically.
That's right. Rabbi Mark, who lives right next door over here, Rabbi Markowitz, on Forest Hills. Is that Forest Hills? Mm-hmm. Yeah? This side, right here? Yeah. Like, his house is probably right there. Yeah. Right there? Yeah, Rabbi Markowitz. Rabbi Chaim Hill, it's a Chabad of rural Georgia. So he drives around with a sprinter. That's his mitzvah tank. The Rebbe said in the 60s, if tanks are used for negative things, for war, to cause loss of life, let's create positive tanks to positive energy, help sustain life and build good things in our communities. And so they took RVs, whatever, not actual tanks, obviously, but the Rebbe once spoke about the word tank and said the following. It's pretty amazing. Take a look at the following text. It's going to be a bit of a journey, but it's going to be, I think, very interesting. Page 33 in your booklets, you see it says riding the spiritual tank. Okay, so first thing, there's a few steps. Number one, there are 6 sections of the Mishnah and Talmud. They are meaning 6 general categories. There are many more volumes, but 6 general categories of the laws. There's Zra'im, agricultural law, Moed, special days and times, Shabbat and holidays, Nashim, women, that's marriage, divorce law, like family law, Nezikin, damages, that's civil and criminal law, Kedoshim, holy things, rituals of the temple, and Tara, purities, rituals of purification. Now, how do you remember what the 6 orders are? So if you take the first letter of each of those words, take the acronym, so it spells Zman Nakat. Zman Nakat, and why is that helpful? I don't know, but the Zohar even says, text 11, the Zohar says that the siman, if you look at the Hebrew of the last line of text 11, the siman and the sign, or the mnemonic, is Zman Nakat, and you see that in the English, the mnemonic is Zman Nakat, Zrayim, Moed, Nashim, Nezikin, Kodshim, and Taharot. Nakat. If you take the last word Nakat and you switch around the letters, the third letter, the first letter, and the middle letter, you know what it spells? No, the last letter, first letter, and third letter.
No.
Tank. Tank. Okay, I know it's Hebrew, and I know it's pushing it. It's pushing it. Tank. Tank.
That's really
Here's an article from the New York Times. An article from the New York Times. All right, an article from the New York Times, text number 12, about the mitzvah tanks from 1994. That is how many years ago? 32 years ago. For some 25 years, the mitzvah tanks have been a familiar sight in bustling downtown streets and college campuses in many cities across the country as they vied for the hearts and minds of Jews. The Rebbe bestowed the decidedly martial name shortly after Israel's victory in the Six-Day War, calling them the tanks of his movement. It is a means of protecting ourselves by attacking the opposing power of the enemy. This is a tank against assimilation and alienation. The Rebbe, in positioning it, introduces awareness and combats apathy and ignorance, and that is the mitzvah tank. Well, if you look at the tank, at the order of the letters of tank, what is the first? Okay, you see what we're doing here? It's so complicated. I'm almost rethinking, like jumping into this whole thing. But if you remember the last 3 letters, Nakat, if you switch them around, tank, so it's Taharot, Nashim, and Kodshim. You know what Taharot means? Pure. And you know what that means? Before you deal with the other ones, when you're approaching the tank, as it were, the first thing you need to do is make sure your motives are pure. There you go. It all comes back to the pure motives. Text number 13. The Rebbe says, first and foremost, the other person must not feel that you're trying to deceive them or gain something from it for yourself, whether to make a name for yourself or any other ulterior motive. When they believe that you speak with sincerity, then their heart opens, allowing them to listen, to understand, and to recognize what you're sharing about the mitzvah of learning Torah, putting on tefillin, or fixing a mezuzah, or giving charity, or filling one's home with Jewish books. So before anything else, one must embody the quality of purity to cleanse oneself of any self-serving interests or hidden agendas, and we'll end with that. And again, it's just a restatement of the point. We began today's class. We began the class by pointing out. Give me a second here. We began the class by pointing out the fact that the prohibition against putting a stumbling block before the blind seems to be something that is well discussed and well detailed in Torah. It doesn't seem to be anything novel or new in this week's Torah portion. So why do we have it here, and what does it mean? And through the journey of tonight's class, we've discovered that it's not simply putting a stumbling block so that someone's going to trip. It's rather giving advice that might benefit them, but definitely benefits you, and therefore is invalidated without being upfront about it. You cannot misrepresent your motives. If you're benefiting and they don't know, that's considered a breach of trust. And so this reminds us of the importance of being above board and being honest. If you're giving someone advice and you're presenting yourself as someone who's helping someone else, then it's got to be for their benefit solely and not for your own self-benefit without disclosing that. Whether it's financial advice, if you're a financial advisor, or whether it's personal advice, or whether it's spiritual advice, those are the three categories that we spoke about. Make sure that if it's being presented as their advice and benefit, that it is completely and solely for them. May our motives be pure. May we indeed seek the welfare of others. And I think it ties into the midst of the golden rule of love your fellows yourself. You would not want that to happen to you. You would not want to find out at some later point in time that someone gave you advice that actually was self-serving them, was to their benefit. That wouldn't be nice. So let's not do that to the other. Thank you for joining tonight. Hope this made sense. Hope you enjoyed it. And we'll look forward to seeing you back next week. A quick announcement. Can I grab this for a second? We are starting our brand new course, 4-part series called For All Humankind tomorrow. It speaks of Judaism's universal values and truths that underlie many of the mitzvot of the Torah, as well as universal values for all mankind. It's an unbelievable course that talks about essential values of our faith, and everybody is invited to come. If you're not yet sure if it's for you, try the first one, try it out, do a test drive. You'll love it, and I'd love to see you there. Tomorrow at noon or at 7:30 p.m., we do in-person and Zoom classes, so it's hard to miss it. I'll also drive around the neighborhood with a bullhorn, with a microphone. I will not, but maybe at some point, if there's extra time going on. All right, great to see you all. Any questions, comments? Questions? Thank you very much. And happy birthday, David. And I also need to remember, I wanted to mention this at the beginning. Of course, today was Yom HaZikaron, Israel's Remembrance Day. Israel's day of remembrance and memorial for all of the fallen soldiers throughout the years, throughout the decades, as well as all the victims of terror. Indeed, not only is it a day that is marked in Israel, it's a day that's marked in all of our hearts. And so we should take the time to reflect and to think about, we who are amongst the living, what we can do to honor the memories of those whose lives were taken, and indeed bring more light into the world, as we know that every life that is lost is one more flame that no longer shines. And so each of us, therefore, can think about ways to increase our light, to somehow, step in for someone who can no longer share that light themselves. And in that way, we can be the proxy for them and bring light into the world. And let us all say, Amen.
And we now transition into Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach, right? Yom HaAtzmaut. Tonight, starting right now. Yeah.
It started already here.
Yeah. Just now, 8:37, I think, is to say, yeah.
78th anniversary.
78th anniversary of Israel, the state of Israel. Okay, good. Good to see everyone. Laila Tov, and we'll see you soon.
Laila Tov.
Lila,
Good night, everybody.